Welcome back to the channel. Now, for a long time, if you wanted a fast EV with great range, you went for a Tesla. What else was there? But then the traditional car makers got serious about EVs and developed some competition. One of those companies was the VW Group, and they gave a rather large blank cheque to the teams at Porsche and Audi to see what they could come up with. And boy, did they deliver. Now we have the Taycan and the e-tron GT. And today, we're asking, if you had the money, which one should you buy? We're comparing both of them. And stick around to the end when we get onto the all-important performance. So my name is Martin Lee, and if you like what we do here on the channel, make sure you hit subscribe and the bell icon so you never miss a show. Okay, let's start at the start, because when you look at these two cars, they may look different, but they share a huge amount of DNA. The biggest being they're both pinned on the same platform. This is Volkswagen's J1 platform. It's a fully dedicated platform for EVs, and it may only ever be used for the Taycan and the e-tron GT. Manufacturers frequently shoehorn the EV gubbins of their cars into a combustion counterpart. The batteries go under the seats, the wires go where they can find them, and of course, those cars were designed originally to have a big old engine up front. Increasingly, we're seeing dedicated platforms that allow the car makers to start from scratch and not make compromises. And in the past, we've spoken about the likes of Kia and Hyundai using their dedicated eGMP platform for the new Ioniq 5 and EV6. So, Porsche and Audi both stuck their hand in the VW cookie jar and pulled out the J1 platform to start designing their EVs around. In terms of styling, it's great to see that each of the brands has held onto their history and their design language, albeit with interesting tweaks to bring them into the EV age. The Porsche is undoubtedly the sleeker of the two. It favours more curves and bulges than the sharp lines and angular creases of the Audi, but then again, that's the Audi style. At the front, we see the bonnet, the hood of the Taycan plunging a little bit more than the Audi and joining with the front bumper more seamlessly, I would say. And you have some discrete intakes that form a fang-like drop from the light cluster of the Porsche. On the other hand, the Audi has it's a busier front end, opting for the form of a closed-off grille. And at the rear, the Porsche, again, I reckon it looks more curvaceous. Both have the currently uber-fashionable light bar stretching across the back. Where the Audi's bulges at the light cluster on either side, the Porsche has a more consistent shape that I think forms seamlessly with those rear lights. But what do you think of the styling? Let us know in the comments below. Building cars on the same platform doesn't mean the cars will be the same size. Just look at what VW are doing with the MEB platform. But in this case, they're pretty much the same, which is why many people think they are the same car with a different badge and slightly different styling, but there are many differences we'll get onto. In terms of the height, width and length, nothing more than an inch difference really. You get similar size boots, trunks. The 366 litres isn't great, but it'll suffice for a grand tourer. You'll struggle to fit too much gear in there, but then again, you're probably not buying these cars to take the kids to crash and put their bikes and stuff in. You might be crossing continents with maybe just you and one other person and some luggage in the back. Get a boost of a frunk in both, just over 80 litres, and it's worth noting a slightly bigger boot is available. There's not much in it there, but let's move on. Now, before we talk about power and range and speed, let's do the part that I love. Let's talk about batteries and charging. It's worth noting there's various options that'll affect things in the battery department. So we'll be taking our pick of the numbers between both cars. There are plenty of specifications of both of these at different price points as well. So we'll start with batteries. We're going to skip the entry-level version of both cars because, let's not be cheap, let's jump straight to the top-of-the-line options, although admittedly, there's a big difference in price. Both cars come with a 93.4 kilowatt-hour battery. But they both have substantial buffers on either side of empty and full, meaning you don't get access to all of that potential stored energy. That buffer is there to protect the battery. The Porsche gets you 83.7 kilowatt hours. Audi give you a little bit more, around 85 kilowatt hours. Of course, for less than half the money, you could get a version of the Porsche that has a 71 kilowatt hour usable battery. So what do you get out of those batteries in terms of range? As always, it depends on how you drive them, so we can only go by the official WLTP figures. The Audi e-tron GT, in its basic form, will get you a range of 487 kilometers, a smidge more than the hot RS version. There's a much bigger variation with the Porsche though. Let's take the Taycan Plus with the larger battery. That range is 484 kilometers. And what about when you finally start falling short on battery and need to charge? Well, this really is the party piece of the platform. We'll start with AC. Both will charge 11 kilowatts, and that's good. You can option 22 kilowatts AC charging, find yourself a nice 3-phase AC post somewhere, and you can charge pretty quickly on AC, but many people at home are charging around 7 kilowatts anyway. It's about 13 hours, leave it overnight. But here we go, let's talk DC fast charging, and both of these cars will suck up the electrons at a pretty frightening speed. Both cars are built on the J1 platform, which has an 800-volt architecture. Now, more volts doesn't automatically mean it's better. Look at Teslas, they charge very quickly on a 350, 400-volt architecture, but the Taycan and the Audi will take the charge speeds from the 262 kilowatts that I've seen a Taycan charging, and even 270. I saw on YouTube somebody charging their e-tron GT. 270 kilowatts is hugely impressive, but there's even better to come, because it's not so much about the peak rate, it's about the curve. In other words, when you plug it in, does it hit that fast rate and then go down quickly, or will it charge quickly as the battery gets full? And it's good news with these cars. According to graphs from Fastnet, a charging provider in Europe, these cars maintain their peak up to 30% state of charge, but they'll hold on to 200 kilowatts charge speed all the way to 60%. And even at 90%, and you really shouldn't be doing too much DC fast charging at 90%, if only just to move off the charger for the next person waiting, they'll still do 50 kilowatts. Although the actual time difference in a DC charging session is so small, it's not worth arguing about. The reality of charging these cars today is that the infrastructure is often years behind the car's capabilities. Alright, here we go. You want the performance numbers, don't you? Both of these cars are fast. They are very fast. Now, forgetting about range and efficiency and jumping into the performance versions, how hot can we get these cars? The e-tron GT RS and the Taycan Turbo S. The Audi puts out an impressive 475 kilowatts, 830 newton meters of torque. It'll get you all the way to a top speed of 250 kilometers per hour. With all-wheel drive thanks to a motor mounted on the front and another on the rear axle. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 0 to 62 miles an hour is 3.3 seconds, blisteringly fast. But we can go better. On the Taycan Turbo S, total power is 560 kilowatts, 1,050 newton meters of torque, and a top speed of 260 kilometers an hour. But the figure that you want to know, what will the sprint take? That is 2.8 seconds. Now, it's worth noting the Porsche has a slightly stiffer suspension. That'll help, of course, and give it a more poised feel in the twisty bits, although it won't eat up the bumps and the ramps like Audi will do on a long journey. But one thing that helps both cars is second gear. Not that you can engage it yourself. It's a rare thing to find in EV, and it helps with efficiency at higher speeds. So, what separates these two cars? Very little. And why would you buy one over the other? Well, I'd take either. This is where the conversation gets interesting though. It'll depend a lot on the individual. If it was me, I'd be taking the Porsche because I think it's so beautiful, and ultimately it is a pacier car. But you want the Taycan Plus is the spec I'd go for. 0 to 62 miles an hour, 5.4 seconds is plenty for me. Anything quicker, and it's probably going to get me in trouble with those blue lights, and I'd really appreciate the extra range for taking a longer trip. For others, there's no doubt they're going to go Porsche Turbo S, and they won't be put off by the eye-watering price tag. So, that's enough from me this time. Now it's time for you to have your say in the comments below. 2 exceptional cars. And we didn't even have time to go into the Cross Turismo version of the Taycan. Maybe that's for another day. So, which one would you go for? Maybe neither. Is there something else that you would like? Or the extra space of a Model S plaid version? And if you enjoyed this video, let us know any other comparison videos you'd like us to make. Thank you so much for watching. If you like it, give us a thumbs up so we know to make more like it. And we'll see you on the next one.